Morning, guys. Welcome back to another Tuesday session. As usual, Tuesday sessions are our reading and video sessions where I'll be presenting the material and covering a video showing examples and maybe extra explanations for some of you. Again, I advise you guys to read first, then watch the videos, or read and watch the videos. But definitely read because it's the reading materials that gonna cover most of the information for your assignments. Alright, let's take a quick look at the assignment from last week, which many of you have pending. But just to cover it real quick, we've been talking about trace tables, and all trace tables is taking into account what our variables are holding at any given time. So in this one, for the assignment, this code is doing one thing. We have two variables. Each one has its own respective value right now, and then we assign it to another variable called answer. And what is it being assigned to? It's being assigned to those two variables being added up together. And then the last thing the code does is just print out the answer for us to see. Now, the point of a trace table is, what if this isn't always the case? What if this changes, which is how life is, things change. For this current example, 24 plus 29 would give you what? 53. However, if we change those values, then answer will not be 53 anymore, right? It's gonna be a different value. And that's what the trace table is for. It covers what if variable 1 was this instead, and then it just puts it into a table. And that's all we're doing with the trace tables. We're keeping track of what the variables will be holding if one variable becomes something else. In today's lesson, we're going to continue with that, basically with that idea. It's just that we're going to change the way the code works for this lesson. We're going to go back and cover into if-else structures or statements, and then we're going to use trace tables to keep track of what these variables will hold or will become based on different conditions. If we were to say variable 1 is 25, what would variable 2 be? If variable 1 was 10, what would variable 2 be? And what if variable 1 was this large number here? What would variable 2 be? And vice versa. What if variable 2 was 100? And what would variable 1 be in that case? That's basically what trace tables are used for. We try to predict what those answers will be. And when we run the code and it's something else, then we can go and decide that, okay, either the code has an error or we made an error. And that's one way to test your code and make sure it's running correctly. So for the assignment, we did that just without the table. If variable 1 was 90 instead, what would be the answer at that point? Well, if variable 1 was 90, and note I say use a pen and paper to write down the code, if not you have to be scrolling up and down. If this was 90 instead of 24, then answer would be greater, right? It would be 90 plus 29, and that will give you 119. Therefore, the answer then won't be the 53 as in number 1. It would be 119 in this case. And then you go and read the question again, and then you go and just apply those changes. What if variable 1 was 14? What if it was negative 90? And then notice when we hit question 6, we switch it around. Well, we're not changing up variable 1 now. Variable 1 will stay as 24. But in question 6, we are asking now instead, well, what if variable 2 was equals 100 instead? Well, then if this was 100, then you add it with 24, which was the original number in code, then we can say it's 124. And then you go and do the rest of the questions that way. So I hope I cleared that up from everyone. And go ahead, please finish the assignment. A lot of you are missing this assignment, so go ahead and do that. So for this week, we're building on the same principle, but in this case, we're going to be using if-else structures. When you're writing an if statement covers conditions that are controlled by some value. In this case, we're going to be using the value variable 1. What is the condition? Well, we have to decide that. We start writing an if statement by using the keyword if. We're familiar with the keyword input and print, right? Because input allows us to enter a value, print goes ahead and displays or outputs the value on this side of the screen. With the if, it's a lot more complex because now you're not just putting a variable after it, you have to put a condition. In this case, I want to check if variable equals 10, if variable 1 equals 10 to be specific. My condition is that I want when variable 1 equals 10, then I want everything below that to happen. Everything I type after this point is going to happen if variable 1 is equals to 10. So what do I want to happen? I want to set variable 2 to equals 10 as well. And then since that's all I want, I'm going to put end if, because I need to end my if statement, because what I said just now, I said everything under this if statement is going to run. If I put print hello, that's going to run as well. If I don't end my if, it's going to be stuck on that piece of code. But since I only wanted to do one thing, I'll end it right here. And that's a very simple if statement. And this is all it's saying. Well, if variable 1 equals 25, then we make variable 2 equals 10. That's it. No other conditions, no other scenarios are to be happen. So if and only if variable 1 is 10, then we're going to make variable 2 equals 10. So I'm going to print variable 2. So I have to ask you guys, will this work? Will variable 2 be 10? No, because variable 1 is not equal to 10. So it will not enter into this condition because the condition has not been met. The if statement is controlled by the conditions, and if this condition is not met, then variable 2 will not equals to 10. And if I run this, I get back 0 because variable 2 isn't set to anything. If you notice from line 1 to 6, the only time I set variable 2 to a number is on line 4. But because this condition was not met, then it's not being set to anything, so it stays as a 0. So if we were to incorporate a trace table into this, it could be that, alright, let me open up a new file and create a quick table for this. This table is just going to be 2 columns, variable 1 and variable 2. So in our code, we have it that variable 1 is equals to 25, right? Well, if variable 1 is equals to 25 in this moment, what did we get back for variable 2? We got 0 because variable 2 will not have any value if variable 1 is 25. What if we decided to say, well, what if variable 1 is 100? What's the answer for variable 2? Based on this code, the trace table should return 0 once again because variable 1 is not 10. Now if I say variable 1 is 10, variable 2 should be 10 because that's what we expect. So let's go ahead and do that. First one we said was, what if it's 100? We run it, 0, because this condition here is not being satisfied. It's not true, it's not happening, so it won't come in here. It's kind of like if you're going to an event and it requires you to wear, you know, closed shoes, a proper shirt, proper long pants. If you're not wearing those clothes, then you're not allowed in. It's pretty much the same principle here. If variable 1 is not 10, then you're not going to get a variable 2 to be set to 10. So if we're going to set it to 10 now, meaning the conditions are met, then finally we have variable 2 being set to the number 10. Alright? That's the most straightforward if condition. Is that condition being satisfied? Yes or no? If it's not, then the if statement is not run, or it's not run in here. It doesn't get in. It doesn't get into the venue. It doesn't get into the location. So what happens when this is not 10? It does read in line 3. It does come here. But this is kind of like the security at the front of the gate. The security checks, well, is variable 1 equals 10? No, well then we don't need to run what's in here. You're not allowed in. So we just go around it and we just go to the next line, which is 7. This is not inside here. It's not inside the club. It's not inside the location, right? So it just prints, well, variable 2 is this. And in this case, it's just going to be 0 because we don't set it when variable 1 is 100. So those were the values we expected, and that's true. And if it gave me, for example, if I put 152 here, and for some reason the code gave me 10, then I know there's something wrong with the code, right? Because I'm not expecting 10 there, I'm expecting 0. So that's a very basic way to just test out your code and make sure it's working. It's not really a good test to be done for this code here because this code is very straightforward. But when programmers are working on apps, when they're working on software, they're not using code that's as simple as this. So using a trace table helps them organize, you know, hundreds of code and try to just isolate their problems on one section at a time. Alright, but what happens now when we don't want variable 2 to just be 0 all the time? In most cases, variable 1 will not be 10 than it will be 10, right? In most cases, variable 1 will be some different number. That's when we incorporate the second keyword in an if-else structure, which is else. The word else is exactly what it sounds. Well, if variable 1 is not 10, then do we just leave variable 2 on its own? Do we just abandon it? No, we want to set variable 2 to something so that it's not just 0 all the time. We can use that number to let us know that, okay, variable 2 was not set because variable 1 wasn't 10. We don't want variable 2 to just be at 0 because a 0 doesn't help us when it comes to codes. A 0 doesn't help us distinguish between other numbers. So we use the word else. Else is the key word we use for anything that does not meet this condition. So we're not just abandoning variable 2, we're actually using it still, but this time we're not just going to let it be 0. We're going to make variable 2 be, well, by default, let's just give it a 1. If it's a case where variable 1 is not equals to 10, then if it's anything else, we're still going to set variable 2 to a number, just so it's not a 0 at that point. Because zeros can cause a lot of problems if your code doesn't handle the 0 properly. So in this case now, instead of returning a 0, it should return 1. Variable 1 is not 10, so we at least set variable 2 to become 1. And any number you can imagine to put variable 1 to, as long as it's not 10 and it doesn't enter this block here, well, it's an else. It's everything else anything else, we're gonna at least set variable 2 to be 1. So in this case now, our trace table becomes different. It's not gonna be 0 anymore. We have a case where it can be something else. In this case, it should be 1. Alright? And that's pretty much how the if else works. You put one condition that you want to make it apply to. And if that doesn't work, if it's not this, then we have a second part that covers anything else. It's just a backup plan, if you will. Well, if you go to the venue, if you go to the event and you're not dressed appropriately, well, do you just go home and cry and be sad? No, you have an else. What's the backup plan? Well, let's go buy some food. Let's go chill at Celebrity, or let's go to some restaurant that you like and let's just buy some food and hang out there, right? You don't want to just be, alright, well, I'm not wearing the proper clothes to enter this venue, so I'm gonna go home. No, it's Saturday night. It's 6 o'clock. You're gonna go home? Nah. Have a backup plan. Do something else. In this case, we're setting variable 2 to 1. Last thing I want to cover is just to change our control variable. What if variable 1, we know that it's more than likely not going to be 10 most of the time. So what if you want to cover a range instead? In your notes, I put, what if variable 1 was greater than 50? That gives us more range to play with. Now it doesn't have to be just one set number. So your control here is that you're not going to say if variable 1 equals 10, I want to cover a larger range. So what if variable 1 is not greater than 10? Or if we stick with the venue policies or rules, we could say what if variable 1 is greater than 18? So now if variable 1 is greater than 18, let's put 17, because let's say this place is restricted to adults only and variable 1 in this case is only 15, then you know that he's not going to be able to come into here. If variable 1 is not greater than 17, which is basically 18, you're not allowed in. Well, if that's the case, we have a backup plan. If you are over the age of 17, let's say 18, let's go just 25. Then you run this, you get a 10. You're at 10, you're allowed in, done. If you are not, and you are only 16, then, well, backup plan. Let's go back to square one. Right? If you are -5, well, in terms of age, then something's wrong there, but it's still less than 18, you are not allowed in. Back to square one. Alright, so that's just one way to control your if statement. You can use a set number, and that's when you use equals, or you can cover a range. You could use greater than. So if it's greater than 17, if you wanted to, you could put also less than 17. But since our example we're using today is a place, and this place restricts you from coming in, one, if you're not wearing the proper clothes, so it's going to be exact, or two, you're not older than a certain age, then we can use greater than this. We use greater than 17. Alright, so that's the two ways you could put a condition. You could either put an exact, meaning equals, or you could put a range, so you could just put the greater than sign or less than sign. Alright, so we'll end here. Your notes basically end similarly to that same example. One thing I did with your notes is that instead of just setting variable 2 to one number, I'd use variable 1 and I do an operation. So in this code here, it's still similar to the one that I've shown in QBasic, but in this case it's if variable 1 is greater than 50, meaning he's allowed in, then variable 2 will be the number that we had for variable 1 minus 5. So in this case, variable 1 is 25. Is it greater than 50? No. So we're not going to be minusing 5 from that number today and setting it to variable 2. Alright, so what's the backup plan? We're going to take that number and we're going to add 10 to it. And this is what variable 2 is going to become. So in this case, variable equals 25. It's not greater than 50, so we add 10. 25 plus 10 gives you 35. What if variable 1 is 100 now? Okay, it's 100. 100 is greater than 50. He's good. He's allowed in. But notice when you're allowed in, it doesn't do the same thing. So this time you're going to minus 5. Maybe because you're allowed in, you had to pay the entrance fee, which was $5. So you went in with this amount of money and you had to pay $5 to enter. You could look at it like that. If you don't have at least $50, you're not allowed in. So if you are allowed in, then what we're going to do here is minus 5 from your initial amount. So in this case, 100 was the initial amount. Minus 5, you end up with 95. What if you have negative 25? Man, you really broke if you're at negative 25. Is negative 25 meeting the 50 limit? Is it greater than 50? No. Well, what am I going to do? Well, in this case, I need to make some money, so I go and do something that gains me $10. So we don't have more than $50. So we go ahead and do something else. We take that negative 25 and we'll add 10 to it. We made 10, and now variable 2, because that's what we're doing, we're setting variable 2, is now at 15, because negative 25 plus 10 is negative 15. You're broke, but you're not as broke as before. Alright, so that's the condition here. Right? So under if, this is what happens. If not that controlled condition, then everything else, we do this instead. And this is basically your assignment here. I haven't posted it. I'm going to post it on Thursday. It's going to use pretty much the same code here. And as usual, 10 questions. And we're just going to be changing what variable 1 is going to be. Just like assignment 1. For assignment 2 here, same form, name, last name, class. And then I'm just going to be asking questions like, well, what if variable 1 was 90? Then what would variable 2 be? So it's just like our trace table. What if variable 1 was 25? What if it was 100? What if it was negative 25? So based on that, you answer the question. What if variable 1 was 90? Then variable 2 will be, well, what happens to variable 2 when variable 1 is 90? Well, this happens. And then you just go back and just answer the questions. So the value that will be printed for variable 2 will be, well, you perform the calculation based on whether variable 1 fits this condition or not. Okay. So that's it for this lesson. Please read the reading assignment, well, the reading material. I've already posted it along with this video. Yes, I do use OBS to record the classes. It's very handy. It's very easy to work with. It streamlines with YouTube, so you could just go to settings. If you want to record something on your screen, you could go to stream. It provides the link for you, so you could click on the link and it's going to take you to your YouTube account with your studio in this case, and it's going to basically ask you to copy this code here. It's hidden because if I had shown this code to you, you could actually just copy this code, put it into OBS, and you're going to stream as me with my account. So keep your stream code secret so that only you know it. Alright? You don't want somebody else to be streaming foolishness in your account. And once you have that, OBS streamlines it. So you just click start streaming. Once you have the code properly pasted here, then you just go ahead and it live streams by itself. You just check on the help. If it's green, that means your internet connection is good. If it's orange, it's alright. But if it's red, there'll probably be some lagging for those who are watching it live. But it's still going to be uploaded when you end the video. Right? So for those of you who are watching, that's how you use OBS basically. Just make sure the screen is being shown in the OBS software. If it's showing a black screen here, that means it's not capturing your desktop screen. For some laptops and computers, you have to use your integrated graphics, meaning that if your laptop has a graphics card or if your computer have a graphics card, OBS might not run properly. You might have to set it to use the graphics card. So that's one of the issues I had when using OBS. I would have to manually switch over to my integrated graphics instead of the video card that comes with my laptop, and that's how I had it working with this. So that might be one issue you run into. Alright, yeah, that's a tutorial on OBS. That's it. I'm gonna end today here. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week. But if you have any questions beforehand, send me a comment in the stream. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And Thursday, remember, your assignment will be posted then, so please get that done. If you haven't done the last one, get it done as well. I will be using these assignments to help with maybe some of the grades that maybe some of your missing work, or if you have some work that is low, then maybe I might help use these assignments to help boost those grades for you. Alright, guys, see you next